Good evening, everyone, and happy holidays to one and all out there. And welcome into the season finale of Tigers Tonight. I'm your host, John Maddox. We will be joined shortly by the other best co-host in all the land, Brian Moss, as he navigates lovely New York traffic. But we are joined, of course, here in the palatial Marley Manor in beautiful, scenic, crime-free Hernando, Mississippi, the one and only Larry Marley. Mr. Marley, first of all, happy birthday. Second of all,
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. You saw me earlier, and I'm filled with the holiday spirit, and I'm very happy that I made it another year, which is surprising. It was a hell of a year for all of us.
It was. We were talking, to put it in football terms, man, we were up 35-7 going into the fourth quarter, and then with about 2 minutes left in the third, the wheels kind of fell off there, and we fumbled and pick six and kick return and fumbled the kickoff, and here we are. We're down 42-35 driving. It's almost like we're Rutgers football. Anyway, that's a whole nother story for another time. So on to happier news, although, again, happy holidays to everyone. Hope you had a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, and here's to 2025, which will be here in a week, which is almost unfathomable. But it's been a while since we've gathered together here around the computer screens. But before we last met, Memphis beat West Virginia by a final score of 42-37 in the Frisco Bowl. Larry, before we get into numbers too much, your thoughts?
Well, so sort of like our year, Memphis got off to a really hot start. And, you and I are texting sort of at a certain point, it got to, and I don't know if it was the 17-7 or if it was 28-14. One of those points we were texting and we was like, okay, does West Virginia really care at this point? Like, we're going to test whether they want to be here. And I think that they showed that they did. West Virginia came back, to their credit, pushed Memphis. Memphis probably should have won the game by more, but the bottom line was West Virginia, wanted to be there. They showed up, and they played until the last snap, literally, almost. And I was impressed with West Virginia's. They had a good game plan. I was impressed with their everything, not including their defensive line, which I did. Their defensive line was okay. That's not to disparage anybody, but I'm just saying that was, to me, I watched that game and I was like, okay, we could run the football on them. And Seth was never really pressured that much. So and I think that was the bottom line. If you look at the stats are they had more, West Virginia had more time in possession, they had more yards, but they had the 2 turnovers. And Memphis was able to run the football, and those 2 things was what won the game for Memphis.
Well, it was a wild game where the 2 teams went 8 for 8 combined in the red zone, and 12 of 24, nearly 50. Well, exactly 50% with my Memphis City Schools math skills.
Right.
On third downs, West Virginia 2 of 3 on fourth down. They ran 20 more plays than Memphis. Memphis only ran 56 plays. That's some pretty damn good efficiency when you can get 42 points out of 56 plays. No surprise here. It was kind of Seth's going away party, although he, ends up only tying the AAC record for most passing touchdowns. Seth was 18 of 26 for 294 and 2 scores. Garrett Green on the other side was as advertised. He was 29 of 40. 328 yards, 2 touchdowns, but that 1 critical interception. But Green also rushed for 7 carries for 95 yards. And, we talked about that with, I believe it was Keenan. We talked about that with him. The one thing Memphis couldn't do, the one thing Memphis couldn't afford to do was let Green kind of cut loose on the outside and get in the open field. And his credit, he did it. And, it was just another case where Memphis just felt like a half step behind on that all night long, where, the play would break down and there was no contain on the outside, and Green just took advantage of it. If you take Green's numbers out of it, Memphis limits West Virginia to right at 3.5 or right at 4 yards a carry.
Right.
but this was not one of Memphis's better rushing performances either. They
Right.
ended up with just 180 yards, and Seth is your second leading rusher, 8 carries for 61 yards, including a long of 23. Greg DeRosier, just 2 carries, 48 yards. Brandon Thomas, of course, had the touchdown, 2 carries for 4 yards, but just 17 carries and 70 yards for Mario Anderson. But he also had 22 yards in the receiving game. But boy, Rock Taylor and DeMar Blankenship, between the two of them, 236 yards on 9 catches. And, Blankenship had that 89-yarder that should have been a touchdown. And, it just wasn't to be for Seth to get that record. But, man, and just 5 receivers. This was a weird game for Memphis because usually they've got 8-9 guys catching the football, just 5 in this game. And if you take Brandon Thomas's, although he had 12 yards on that catch, you take that out, you've got just 4 guys that caught the passes, which again, very unusual for Memphis. And you look over Hudson Clement for West Virginia that dude's a monster. 11 catches, 166 yards, but did have a crucial drop. Gallagher,
Wow,
2 touchdowns, and that was a critical drop he had. But they had 8 receivers catch, the 2 touchdown passes. But again, Larry, the thing that came up, the Tigers turned West Virginia over, and we said pregame that was the key: is could Memphis turn them over, and they did twice.
Right, and of course the critical one at the end of the game where they got the interception. If you watch the game, the difference in that game again was our ability to run the ball in crucial situations, which has been a struggle for us. When we got 3rd and short, we were able to run the football on them. And which I thought you mentioned something interesting. DeRosier only had 2 rushes. One of them was for a 46-yard touchdown. I didn't understand why he didn't get the ball more. Did he get injured? I didn't. So I was partially watching the game as I was traveling. But I thought he was going to play a really crucial part. He did early, and then they kind of went away from him. But I thought it was interesting. But anyway, if you want to think about the future, DeRosier, and his speed, I thought, we saw a lot of the seniors, and they were really, you and I talked about this, how we lost all 3 of our main wide receivers. They're all gone. And because Blankenship is declared for the draft, I guess people already know that. And you've also lost your 2 tight ends. So, I mean, you're really starting from the beginning, right? Next year, trying to figure that out. But I thought it was a great end of the year. Memphis was very efficient, and they did what they had to do, especially defensively. You talked about the turnovers. Don't dismiss the fact that we forced them into a 4th down turnover as well. They went forward on 4th and didn't get it and gave us a short field. And I believe that was when DeRosier had the long touchdown. So that's sort of almost like a 3rd turnover, right? We saw that in UTSA where we did that. So,
yeah, and almost had another one early. You remember, I think it was either the first or second play of the game where Greg Rubin dove in and knocked the ball. I think it was Rubin knocked the ball loose, and Memphis just couldn't get on top of it. We're going to get into the down and dirty of it later, but actually Anthony Lanphier will be back this coming season because of the Diego Pavia ruling where junior college players will get another year. I've got opinions. I've got some thoughts on all that, but so 42-17 or 37 Memphis will certainly take it. As we always say, you had to remind me, you count the ones on the left versus the ones on the right, and you just go on about your business. And so Memphis, for the second time in school history, 11 wins on the season, 11-2. And the Ryan Silverfield train, man, it just keeps rolling. And Memphis up, I believe I'm waiting for Bryan to kind of get in and get settled and give us the numbers. But, Memphis up to like 15 in the transfer portal rankings for rivals. And, Memphis has, I think, now 21, which when I looked earlier today would be tied with actually our friends in Hattiesburg.
Yep.
Southern Miss for the most transfer portal entries. Of course, Southern, that's not surprising considering he brought like a third of Marshall's team with him
And
down there.
let me just, as someone who saw quite a bit of Southern this year, they needed it. Okay?
They need all the help they can get.
Yep.
So while we wait on Bryan, let's talk about a couple things. So for those who don't know, Marshall was supposed to play in the Independence Bowl,
Yep,
and had to, pardon the term, opt out because they weren't going to have enough bodies to be competitive against Army, and so now Army will face 5-7 Louisiana Tech, and I don't want to get too far off the Tiger train here, but we got to fix this, right? Right,
yep.
like we gotta fix it. And look, I know the first thing people are going to say, you're the one that said you want player movement. 100%. I want player movement. I am not opposed to guys moving. I never, ever, ever would I be opposed to that. If coaches can do it, players should be able to do it. But we've got to fix the window, because think about it. Although Army's kind of getting the treatment they got all year, looking at you, AAC office, they go from playing a conference champion in Marshall to, no offense, Louisiana Tech, fine program, I'm sure, 5-7 Louisiana Tech in what will be a de facto road game now for Army,
because it's in
Reston
Shreveport.
Is hour-ish, hour and a half, somewhere through there.
Not
Although
even
Army
that.
is one of those names
Not even that.
I think there's, I could be wrong. I'm sure there's
actually a large Army base there.
Yeah.
Not very far. It's just outside of Alexandria. So and I would, of course, there's always an Army base, but Fort Sill is actually really big. Anybody that's seen Southern Comfort or whatever, it was that Army base in Fort Sill. Anyway, so you're right, John. Like, this is going to be the window. You and I kind of talked about this at lunch. The window's got to change. We've got to change the window to either after all the bowls are over or something like that, right? After the championship, whatever. But we've got to change the window so that these guys, and I was actually going to talk about this too. This was a thing you and I talked about. We've seen this year way fewer opt-outs, way fewer. And I think that's because, a lot of the teams are still playing, right? So the top 12 are actually there. So where you were seeing the opt-outs was where, you had guys who didn't make the top 4, right? They weren't in the top 4. And they were just outside of that. We saw that with Florida State last year, right? Well, now those guys are really there. So outside of that, you're not seeing a whole lot of opt-outs. We didn't have any opt-outs. And I just think that's sort of been fixed. Now we got to fix the portal side of it. Because
there are 5,900 kids I think I saw in the portal.
Right.
And again, I'm a guy that's will always be rule number 1, secure the bag, and when you have doubts with rule number 2, refer back to number 1. 100% of the time, I will die on the hill. Players should be able to earn what they can earn and move as much as they want to, because guess what you and I do? Yep. When we don't like our job where we move somewhere else. And if you don't think that playing college football is a job, that's a whole other
you hadn't done it. Then that's
but we got to fix the window. And
right. I don't care how you do it.
A couple of my thoughts are, when your team is done, you can transfer, but that penalizes the good teams it's because the bowl season stretches now from December the 14th. When's the national championship game? Like February,
second or third week of
January, second, third week of January. So you can't really do that. So now that you've removed the NLI, you've removed the national letter of intent, it doesn't matter anymore. So you have that February signing day. Again, Bryan would have to give all the details because that's out of my wheelhouse. But let's say you open the portal. That sounds so grand, doesn't it? We open the portal January the 17th through February 1st. and you move signing day to the 15th. So, and then, you said earlier you have to have a post spring portal as
You
well.
did, yes.
Let's say May 1st to May 30th or May 31st. How many days are in May? So those are your portal months. So now coaches have June, July, August to know what their rosters are going to look like. You protect the bowl games as much as you're going to. I do think, though, if you do see that portal window pushed out, you probably will get a few more opt-outs because let's be real, guys are scared of getting hurt. And I get it. I mean, some of these guys, especially, if you are not going to be, if you are not projected top 3 rounds, you need to play because you're not losing
Right.
yourself money. But, let's look at this from Mario Anderson's perspective. Mario could go the first day. I don't think he's a first round guy. He's your running back. But I think he could go second, third round. I don't think that's out of – I haven't seen the big boards or anything. I don't know who's earned themselves more money this year, him or Rock. I know they have both made themselves quite a bit of money, and possibly Demir Blankensee too, although his size is going to be his issue at the next level.
That's his problem.
But we got to fix this because, and the reason Marshall is in the state Marshall is in is because when coaches leave, you have the portal is automatically open for 30 days. That is nonsensical to me to be in the midst of portal season and the portal be open when the coach leaves. So I just think you have to move that portal to January. I don't see how, because it's not sustainable for bowl games. If you're going to have NIL, you're going to have player movement. It's not sustainable. And it's not, let's be real, it's not fair to the bowl games. It's not fair. What's happening to the Independence Bowl isn't fair. That's not good for them. It's not good for football. It's no reward whatsoever for Army, who, despite what we've all said and joked about, not playing I don't think they played outside of Navy, which wasn't a conference game. I don't think they played anybody that's finished in the upper half of the conference except East Carolina.
Well, no, they played Notre Dame, but they, of course.
Well, I'm talking about in conference. But, so they basically got a free pass to the championship game.
Yep.
But still, they took care of their business, did what they were supposed to do, and they get to the Independence Bowl, which was going to be one of 2 bowls that matched conference champions against one another. Right. And Marshall drops, so now as Army, you go from being able, all right, well, let's show who we are against a peer conference champion to now again. And I'm not slighting Louisiana Tech. They had an okay season. Louisiana Tech's fine program, but to go from playing Marshall to playing Louisiana Tech, that's a bitter pill to swallow. And the next question is going to be, well, why didn't Memphis want to jump in that spot? Well, Memphis had already committed. Right. And as we've talked about ad nauseum, Memphis had no interest in playing after Christmas, just none whatsoever.
That was their thing was, if they're going to play after Christmas, they wanted to play a power team, a good power team. Like that was, I was told multiple times from people that Memphis had talked. They had been, I think they were even offered the bowl in Fenway, the Fenway Bowl. I think they were offered that, and they just said no. We're not doing that. And they were offered a couple of other things, and they just Frisco was Seth could be at home, right? It was a homecoming for him, and they got to play West Virginia, which they wanted a power opponent. And there was just a lot of pluses. It was before Christmas. It was one of the earlier bowls. They didn't have to quit practicing. They would just sort of roll right into the bowl. And it was great. Like they literally got done, and the kids got done with school. They had the bowl, and then everybody went home. And I'm going to add one more thing. I think that is also why Memphis is number 15 in the transfer portal, because they could concentrate on the transfer portal and recruiting guys.
Yep.
And I don't think that's something. I think that's, if there's one thing, you and I have bashed Silverfield a couple of times, more than once. Okay. But one thing he's figured out is that if you're not going to be in the playoff, it really doesn't matter where you play the bowl. It really doesn't. It does matter if you win or lose to him. but it doesn't matter where you play it, but it matters when you play it. And he's figured that out. He's like, okay, I can get this out of the way. Now I can concentrate on recruiting. And it has, look, it's worked. You can say all you want. It's worked. I mean, last year they didn't mind playing after Christmas because they were at home. Right? I mean,
So
you're at home.
right. You could and you could, focus as you could focus on recruiting.
Right.
Because you didn't have to leave.
Travel.
Yeah. There's no, we got to go here for bowl week. Well, you're home. So Memphis today, I mean, the portal was, when we said that the portal was going to be hopping after the bowl game, and buddy, we weren't kidding. And it continues today. It's just, you get Cam Burden today, and you've gotten several 3-stars and 4-stars, Chase Carter, and you've got, the list is mighty long. And to me, and like I say, we're going to get with Bryan for the details on this, but Brendan Lewis to me is the big pickup here, the quarterback from Nevada, 6'2", 209 pounds, a true dual threat quarterback. The question becomes then, Antoine Hill, how does that impact that? But I just think if you have a chance to go out and get an experienced guy, you go get an experienced guy.
Yep.
Because if for no other reason than, yes, the first couple weeks of the season, honestly, against Chattanooga, you could roll Antoine Hill out there and everything be fine. On the road at Georgia State and Troy, everything's fine. If history holds, your first home conference game is going to be Navy. So do you have that, confidence? Do you let Hill build his confidence and have Lewis as sort of a plan B? Or do you tell Hill, hey, we're going to start Lewis, but we're going to play you every game and kind of get you in the rotation and let you get a feel for it? Now, I personally don't think that works. I don't think that's how kids are wired, especially with, the pay to play that's going on now, basically. So I don't think you can tell a kid, hey, I know we're giving you X, but you're going to sit on the bench, because these kids, and the other thing is kids want to play, right? Like that's
right.
That's the part that people don't pick up on, is kids want to play. Right. They don't want to sit on the bench. But, I think Brendan Lewis is a great insurance policy, if nothing else. The running back Rashad Amos from Mississippi, and they really, really went after the defensive backfield, and of course across the offensive line as well. And Memphis has more linebackers than they know what to do with. And buddy, we thought you were never going to make it here. Positive, Paul, with your little suit and tie on there.
What in the hell are you
wearing? Are you mourning Rutgers' latest unraveling here? Oh boy!
Oh, did they lose?
They
lost.
They did.
44-41.
They snatched defeat from the jaws of victory,
as only Rutgers can.
You can't Rutger any more than they just Rutgered.
So Bryan, how in the world are you, sir?
Doing pretty good. I think it's like, I don't know, was it 20 degrees outside right now? We still got at least probably a half an inch of snow if you guys want to come up and enjoy it.
I'm good.
Look, I'm already going to have to be up there in February. No, thank you. I'm only going to come up there when I have to.
So my 2 trips for January are Miami and Orlando. So the weather will be about the same, right? It'll be pretty close to the same. But so Bryan, we talked a little bit about, and want to get your opinion or your thoughts on the Frisco Bowl. It seems like it was 24 years ago, but it was what?
Yeah,
11 days.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. So I want to get your thoughts on what you picked up from the game.
Yeah, I thought the coaches did a fantastic job of getting the players ready from the get-go, even in the press box. I mean, it was obvious to us that Memphis wanted to be there, and it looked like West Virginia did not want to be there. And I was wondering how much of an effect did Rich Rod have, because the players seemed like they were, I don't know. It seemed like the West Virginians were tense, maybe trying to compensate, like trying to impress, and they just got out of rhythm. But they did. I mean, they made a game of it. But it just seemed like to start with, Memphis really wanted to be there, And I tell you, some of those coaching decisions ooh, for Memphis had me shaking my head. But hey, in the end, it worked out for Stewartfield. It worked out for Memphis. And I tell you, being on the field with the players, you could see the relief and the joy that they had. The fact that, only the second time in school history having 11 wins in the season. So, it was a good season. I'll stop short of saying great because obviously they didn't win the AAC. But, the players were totally satisfied. The fans that I talked to even seemed satisfied of how the season went. Disappointed not to be in the championship game, but satisfied that you end with a bowl win and you end with 11 wins. Overall, it was successful.
Damn sure glad we're not Tulane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I just say, and I do get it's complicated bit, right? Like I do understand that. And I think I wrote about this because I do think, but I also think that Memphis winning will have people feeling differently than had Memphis lost against West Virginia. I think going out because only 40 other teams get to do that. Get to say we won our last game of the season. I think it's 40. It may be 42, 3 now with the playoffs. I don't know. But only a little over 40 teams get to say, hey, we finished strong. We finished with a win. And to Larry's point, if you're Tulane and you're John Summerall, you are probably on the verge of the North Carolina job. And then Memphis breaks you. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Memphis broke Tulane. And Vance is right. This was a season of injuries too, because week 1, you lose who the entirety of the offense was built around, which was Sutton Smith and his talents. And the response is, well, you had X number of weeks to change your game plan. And that's all well and good, but that's just not how it works when you literally build an entire offense around a player. But then you lose Greg DeRosier. And to me, that was the big loss. Is you lose him for 6 weeks, 7 weeks of the season, maybe even 8 or 9 weeks. So you lose him for the middle,
and you don't have that speed back.
Nope.
To complement your hammer.
God love Mario Anderson and Brandon Thomas, but they are not speed backs. They are put the foot in the ground and go. And you just, and you miss DeRosier in the passing game too. That's the other place you miss him. Because
you saw how Memphis played when DeRosier came back. It was a totally different offense.
He's a home run hitter.
Had their confidence, and it seemed like the offense had their confidence back.
Well, so if you go back to the Tulane game, how we spread them out. We talked about this the week after. We were able to spread them out, get him in space. That's something we didn't have. So you had Blankumsey. If you look at the UTSA game after we lost Blankumsey, you basically had Rock and Colby, and you couldn't get the top off the defense, and you had no one. You couldn't space, anybody. You couldn't get them in space. Once you got DeRosier and he can beat you to the outside, he can bring his own blocker. He gets to the corner and he can beat you to that spot. Well, now all of a sudden you got guys that are spreading out, and now that makes the runs up the middle. That's what I said before you got here, Brian. One of the things that we saw in this game was that in the spots that we needed, Memphis ran the football very effectively, especially on 3rd and short. And that's something that's we really haven't seen until the Tulane game. Well, UAB before that. But, we were able to do that, to spread them out and run the ball effectively. And I'm just telling you, next year we'll have 2 guys that can do that, but you still need the hammer. You got to have the guy that can run between the tackles. And that's, so to me, that's where we'll talk about next year. But I'm just telling you, like, you saw the athletes, once you got DeRosier on the field, man, that changed that offense completely. And they looked, to John's point earlier, very efficient because they could dictate the pace. Whereas without that guy, you can't do that.
Yeah, right? And the other thing that DeRosier does is he frees up Rock, because now or Demir, you can't just locked down the most interfered with receiver in college football, Rock Taylor, you've got to respect again, and it's spacing and it's spreading guys out. And, that's something Memphis just couldn't do without. I think if they could have kept DeRosier for the season, you could almost withstand Sutton. But I don't think people really know how dynamic of a player Sutton Smith is.
They do.
But
they've forgotten.
You could have lost him, but when you lost both of them, you lost your two home run hitters out of the backfield. That makes it really, really difficult to play. And Memphis kind of cobbled things together, and thank goodness they had the stretch against not so great teams to get to win number 11. I thought West Virginia, once they got behind, I thought they put up a fight. I'm so tired of hearing about Rich Rodriguez. God bless him, wish him the best of luck. But Bryan, good Lord, you didn't have to hear them slobber all over him for 60 minutes. Again, glad he's going home. Good coach, but man, just got tired of hearing.
Is he a good coach?
I think he's a really good coach. I think
we'll see.
I think both he and Scott Frost have learned very, very valuable lessons. That Scott, I can't remember it now, but Scott Frost had a great saying about that. Something like "on your way to happiness." Nobody ever tells you to be happy where you are, and that's 100% true. And I just think you don't get the chance to go back. And two guys, I was trying to think back. This has to be the first time in a very long time that two guys have gotten to go back to their old job in such good graces. But I thought West Virginia, once they got behind, put up a fight. If I don't see, I would obviously love to see Hudson Clement in the transfer portal, and would love to see him in blue and gray. Well, I would love to see him in blue and gray next year. But other than that, I don't want to see that kid again. Because that kid's a gamer. He can flat out play.
Receiver that's
who was the kid from East Carolina, the little white kid from East Carolina that just every time you look up, he was making a catch? I can't remember his name. But and I remember I was at that game, and I remember thinking, oh, I would have hurt him. Like so at some point, I might have got kicked out of the game, but I wasn't going to I wouldn't let him beat me. Like I would have. I'm not saying I'd have been dirty.
Yeah, you would have.
But I might have been.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way. There were anyway. But
he was a gamer.
That's what he reminded me of. And man, when he dropped that pass in the end zone, I thought that was the turning point of that game. I thought,
and it was the easiest catch he had of the night.
Right.
Like that was the easiest catch he had because his first touchdown pass was just absurdly good. So again, 11-2, and I think, people will look back quick. Tell me who the 3 games Memphis lost, because they were 10-3 last year, right? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So without looking it up, who did they lose?
UTSA.
And
we didn't play them 2 years ago, did we?
No, last year.
2 years ago.
2 years
ago. 2023.
When we were 10-3, we lost to Tulane, SMU. I was at those games. And who did we lose to? Who was the other game we lost to?
But that's my point. Like, I don't expect you to remember, but that's my point. In 2 years, will people remember who Memphis lost to this year? And no, they will just look and go, man, Memphis 10-3, 11-2, and Lord willing and the creek don't rise, 13-0 next, whatever that looks like.
Right.
You're like, holy cow, Memphis has really put it together here. Longest streak in the nation of scoring more than 20 points a game. They're over 40 games now. I think we're down to 6 teams with
Missouri
11 straight bowl appearances. Missouri, that was it. Yeah, 56. No, that was Mike. Oh yeah, it was the one up in. It was
the one.
I had the score wrong, but it was the one in
to
St. Louis. Yeah,
right,
the 65-35 was when we went to Como last time with Mike. But But I think that's my point is we had to sit here and think about, well, gosh, who did they lose to?
Right.
But people will remember the Liberty Bowl and they will remember the Frisco Bowl. And I guarantee you, if you quiz people in 3 years, hey, what 2 games did Memphis lose in 2024? Less than 10% of people will remember. So, I'm never going to be one to scoff at 11 wins. And Sam and I, our friend Sam Shoemaker, we had a heated exchange about that expectations can be high and you can't think about where you've come from. And I couldn't disagree with that more. I think that's why that's how you ground expectations, right? That's how you ground yourself to go in 2013 at the end of that season. I think that's the year Memphis went 3-9, I think.
Yeah, that was Justin. And then the next year we flipped the script.
If you'd have said, all right, John, I know Memphis just went 3-9, Bryan, but over the next 11 seasons, you're not going to believe it. Memphis is going to go to a New Year's Six Bowl in there. They're going to win 10 games, 10 or more games, three times during that stretch. We would have thought you were a crazy person.
And have 4 different coaches in that.
Yeah. And to keep it going. Yeah. It's not like you went, oh, well,
and,
all right.
And 2 of those coaches left for way better jobs. One of them for Florida State, right? Virginia Tech and Florida State. So you can't. And think about the assistants that have left and gone to other jobs. Like,
yeah, you look at Mike's 2017 staff.
Right.
That was a hefty staff.
Ryan, Dan Lanning. I hear he's done pretty well for himself, and Kenny Dillingham, who I think's done okay for him.
Well, they're both still in the playoffs.
Look, I have been highly critical of this regime time and again, and some of it fair and some of it probably unfair. I'm really glad this podcast was 2 weeks out because, man, I was miffed after that West Virginia game at the way we let them back in. But again, next year, I won't be able to tell you the box score. I'll just know Memphis won the game. So as we roll along and we get ready for 2025, Bryan, waited on you here. Let's talk transfer portal. Memphis is definitely on the plus side of what is going out the door in terms of transfers versus what's coming in the door. Now, Memphis obviously lose a lot to graduation, which means the transfer portal's got to be better. But, man, Memphis, again, Ryan Silverfield is just crushing it in the portal.
Yeah, he got them up there, a few days ago. They were 14th or 15th in the nation in the Rivals team rankings because other as of right now, they're 17th. But Memphis still has quite a few transfers that Rivals hasn't rated yet. So once they do get rated, Memphis will jump up a little bit. But the worst Silverfield has ever done in the transfer portal is 20th. He has always had at least a top 20 ranking in the transfer portal. And that shows to me, Memphis Silverfield understands the college model is going to the way of the NFL model, and he has that NFL experience. He knows how to, quote unquote, manage money, manage players. And I think he may not be flashy like Mike, but I think Silverfield is a great coach for Memphis because of that. Because at a G5 level, you're going to need the transfer portal, in my opinion, more than you need high school kids right now.
Larry, you sure Bryan wasn't sitting next to us at lunch today?
And that's what I was going to say. So we're talking at lunch, and one of the things that I said was that the college game sort of came to Ryan. He was not. If this was 10 years ago, I don't know that he would have been successful because he's a great recruiter, but I don't know if he's what a quote unquote developer. But what he can do is as you put it, Bryan, he manages a roster as well as anybody, maybe in the country. And I guess what I'm asking you is this: how do you, as you see recruiting now, what is the difference between recruiting a high school kid and recruiting out of the portal?
The portal, you have experience. You have college experience. And I hate it for the high school kids because if you're a high school kid, I was thinking about this today. You really have 2 tiers of high school kids, kind of like college ready. College ready kids are not coming to Memphis. They're going to the higher end. They're going to the Alabamas and stuff like that.
Right.
So 10 years ago, Memphis could get a college ready kid. Now the college ready kids are not coming to Memphis. So what Memphis has to do, what Silverfield has to do, he has to look at the 1B, 1A college. I mean, you could play in college now. 1B is developing kids. So, like, the wide receiver that I think is going to break out next year, who we haven't even seen yet, Keondae Henry, the 4-star kid that he got, didn't see that. I don't think he saw the he may have a couple of snaps, but he didn't see any significant playing time this year, but he will next year. In my opinion, I think he's going to be the new Rock Taylor. So, but the transfer portal, Memphis needs a quarterback. Are you? I mean, I know he has experience of, I don't want to say he lucked out with Seth, but when you look at history, how many true freshmen at Group of 5 level have come in and has been as successful as Seth has?
He's the only one to start for 4 straight years. The only one in the country. Doesn't matter.
Yes.
Group 5, P5, doesn't matter.
I just you don't see that very often. So, but I mean, credit to Searfield. He saw him, he recruited him.
Yeah. And look, we were there, and we know, like, he picked Seth over, the big 4-star recruit. I know he was hurt and all that, but even after the fact, he stuck with Seth, even though we all there's a hill I'll die on. Seth never really. He never really grew the way that say Brady White grew as a quarterback, but he never regressed. He never got worse. His numbers got better every year until this year, right? So to that point, like, you have to give Silverfield credit. I mean, he kept re-recruiting Seth every year, and
yes.
and that's not to be undersold, right? Because Seth probably could have gone for a bag somewhere last year, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know what that bag would have looked like.
Even 2 years ago, he could have.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got to give it to Ryan for this. Like, he stuck with that, and he ended up proving that how he did this, how he built this, was not necessarily around Seth, but with consistency. And here's what's going to be interesting. So, and I know John's not giving away anything what John's about to do, but he's got a freshman that's coming in. Does he do that again? Now, and I'm not asking the question here. This is just sort of a put this in your brain. Is he gonna go that route again? Is he gonna pick a freshman, go with it, and go, this is my guy? I'm interested to see. Or is he gonna go with a? Because remember,
if I had to pick right now, I would say
remember
no.
The first 2 years under Seth, we were 6-6, right? We never could win those close games. And then Seth turned the corner. Well, not Seth, but the team turned the corner. And then we started winning all the close games. Is he going to be willing to go back to that, freshman, can't quite win the close one? That's it's just
if that freshman outplays Brendan Lewis, who's coming over from Nevada.
Yeah.
If that 4-star quarterback, or Arrington Maiden, who's on the team now, redshirted this year, if they outplay Lewis, I see Silverfield having no problem.
What about the Hill kid? You've got
that's what we're talking about.
AJ Hill, the 4-star. I just forgot his name for a minute. Yeah, so if Hill or Maiden come in and outplay Lewis, I think Silverfield has proved that whoever plays the best in practice, that's who's going to play. I mean, stars or anything like that, forget about all that stuff. The hoopla, forget about that. If you're a freshman and you beat out, upperclassmen, like, I know it was he was hurt, but push came to shove. Even before he got hurt, Hennigan outplayed Grant Gunnell.
Yep.
And all, I mean, we were hearing that. I wasn't really believing it, because I'm like, really? I mean, Gunnell, I'm thinking, more experience, blah, blah. But people were saying in practice, this Hennigan kid is really outplaying Grant now, and don't be surprised if he starts. And I mean, that's what happened. So yeah, give it to Silverfield. If you're a young kid, if you're a freshman and you outplay, you're going to play.
And I think that's where the NFL model comes into play a little bit here is, I've never understood this fan mentality of, well, he's just playing the kid he likes. The kid he likes his job is dependent upon who he plays. It's not about who he likes. He's got to put the best player out there. Now, we can
likes to win.
Right. He needs to win because, let's just call real. I think Ryan enjoys it here, but Ryan wants to get somewhere else. And Ryan ain't going to get anywhere else by playing a kid that can't play. Like that's just not how this game works. But I think back to the whole freshman thing. I will say that the season starts very favorably for you to roll a freshman out there with Chattanooga, at Georgia State, and at Troy. Now, as our friend from WWE, Lord Jim Ross, says, that next week, business picks up when Arkansas comes to town. So I think at worst, Brendan Lewis is an insurance policy, but the reason I like picking him up is he is the first true dual threat guy we've had. Gosh, I can't remember. Maybe Kenton Evans. Like I'm going back.
You got to go back.
I'm just going back. Like Lewis is a dual threat, and I think Hill is a dual threat as well, a true dual threat. So I think even if Lewis is the guy, it's a situation to me where, Bryan, I think you see Hill have packages in the game where, Hill may not be starting, but he's going to have 8 to 10 plays that are his plays. But now they can't all be runs or whatever, but that way you can work him in, because I think sometimes if you're not a great team, the worst thing you can do is and we've seen it in the NFL this year with Caleb Williams, you just throw a guy out there and you ruin him forever. And what you can't do is you can't start Hill and pull him.
Yeah.
If you're going to pull anybody, you start Lewis. And then if Lewis struggles or when you feel like Hill's ready, you just have to be upfront with guys and say, look, here's where we are. There are 3, the staff was high on Maiden. Like, they recruited him. Of course they want him around. But there are 3 guys, and it's going to come down, like you said, Bryan, who plays the best, because this staff has shown that there's no favoritism, that if you can play, you will play. There's probably the reason that Greg DeRosier's played more than Makari Bodiford did. And, it bore itself out as the season went on. And we questioned, why wasn't Bodiford getting more carries? Why wouldn't why were we just sticking to it? Well, we don't see, I can't say we because I do see it occasionally. We don't see in practice what the coaches see in practice.
Right.
So, and Ryan has always been very, very forthright about that. If you don't perform well in practice, you're not playing on Saturday. Like that's just the way he.
There's a reason for that, and I'll say this twofold. First of all, if you don't care enough to practice hard, you're probably not going to play hard. Let's start with that.
Practice? We talking about practice?
We're talking about practice. Yes, I'm talking about practice.
We sitting here talking about practice?
And I'll say this also. The other nobody knows who practices harder than the other players. And players will watch other players. And we had a quarterback that was tremendously talented, but he never practiced. He didn't, you never saw him working out, any of that stuff. And there was one game he did play in, and he had a bad play. And we were all looking at each other going, you know what? If he practiced harder.
Yep.
And so here's the thing, and this is something that fans don't understand, or maybe they do, but anyway, when you got a guy on the field, especially a quarterback or a position like that, who practices hard, and they're trying, they're really trying, they work out, they do the extra stuff, you play harder with that guy. than you do for the guy that you know doesn't give a flip. I can't remember the quarterback at South Carolina years ago. This is years and years and years ago, back in the 90s. I can't remember his name, but he was known to be like just a lazy piece of crap. And his teammates didn't play hard for him. That's something that fans got to understand. When you have a guy that you believe in, you're going to play harder with him and for him. And don't underestimate that. That is a fact. And you could tell that the Memphis Tigers football team believed in Seth. They believed in him and they wanted to play hard for him. And I'll there's a hill I'll die on. The thing that turned Seth's career around at Memphis was that he, especially this was the game they go over to Hawaii and they don't even get to play. But Seth was studying the whole way over, and the other players understood that. They saw that. This was a business trip for him. And after that team turned around. And I will tell you this, players are if you ask any player, they will tell you who's the hardest workers on their team. And they know. So I didn't mean to go off a tangent, but that's a fact.
All right, Bryan. So now that 2024 is behind us, if you are a linebacker in the transfer portal and you have not heard from Memphis, please reach out to me and let me know, because they've recruited approximately 1,100 linebackers. So obviously you see the positions of need. The one that I'm still a little concerned about, and they may be holding out for somebody, and I know you can't mention names, but maybe shed a little light on it. I'm concerned about receiver. That's the one position I feel good. Everywhere else, I feel pretty good along the offensive line. You've gotten a couple big guys there. You've got a couple more probably coming. But I'm a little nervous about the receiving core. You do have Henry. You also have Brady Cluse, who is going to play a lot. You do get another year with Landfear at the tight end position. You did go get a couple tight ends. Talk me off the ledge a little bit about receiver.
I'm not as worried about a receiver because we've seen what Cluse has done. You've seen the flashes. Jari Hawkins didn't have a lot of opportunity, but he's a receiver that's coming back. But like I said, Keondae Henry, this kid is going to be special. I see a lot of Rock Taylor in him, but unlike Rock, I don't think it's going to take him 3 years to really, seize the opportunity. I think he'll seize the opportunity next year. And you have a wide receiver that committed. Was it Matheson or Masterson? Now, I know he was a D3, or I think it was D3. He didn't play because he was recovering from injury. This dude's fast. I see a lot of Calvin Austin in him. He has hands. He runs good routes. And I just see another walk-on type that is just going to shine. Have the opportunity. Will he shine next year? We'll see. But could they get another wide receiver or two in the portal? That's definitely a possibility. I just don't think a wide receiver is a position of needs like linebacker and DBs, because they have players already on the team. And you have the speedsters, because what's Memphis really, really needing? Speedsters, and they got them. And what you need, at least one good, speeder and one good possession receiver. And the potential is definitely there.
Well, yeah. So what about O-line? I do have concerns there because we lost a lot on the offensive line.
Yeah, it is. I don't think Xavier Hill. He's a starter that comes back, but
That's it.
And Chris Adams.
That's it.
You have.
I think
and
Adams
we also
started
lost. I think Bryan, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't we not lose 6 or 7 total? Like off the
it's up there because you lost Gamble, you lost Gildahoss, Holler. Breedland's coming back, so there's your left guard. Left tackle is back next year. Your left guard is back. You're going to have a new center, and you're going to
You
have
lost both your
a new
centers, didn't you?
Y'all
You
both
lost
your
both
centers.
guys
yeah,
off your two deep.
both
Yeah.
centers. Right guard, you lose your starter, but the backup comes back, and your right tackle is back. I really like the Parker Peterson kid. I know. I mean, he's a redshirt freshman. I mean, I mean, dude is what 6'7", 280. I mean, he's very athletic. I really hope he gets his time to shine. But I mean, he hasn't got that time. So obviously, Chris Adams and Jalen Nichols have beat him out. Xavier Hill, you're not going to unseat him. So I think Peterson will get a look, but he'll definitely be in the 2 deep chart. And they recruited kids, on the offensive line. They go look at the portal game. Austin Gentle. I think he's going to be your center. He's the 4-star offensive lineman from Harvard. When I talked to him after interviewed him, he's really excited. And Matt Hudson really helped Gentle come to Memphis because Hudson gave Memphis glowing reviews and got Austin Gentle interested. And when he came down here, he just fell in love with Memphis. He's like, yeah, I have to come here.
Noted Harvard to Memphis pipeline.
It's starting, but yeah, Austin Gentle is going to be your
center. So as long as he turns out better than Calkins, okay, that's all I'm going to say.
Well, that bar is pretty low. All right, so before we wrap up here, I want to do 2 things. I want to ask each of you, and I've not prepped either one of you on this one. Next year, AAC, you have to take Memphis or the field. Brian, you're up.
To win it?
Mm-hmm. To win the conference title, win the conference championship, you have to take Memphis or the field.
Well, I know deep down, I really feel Memphis will be in the championship, but I will take the field. As of right now, I take the field because I don't know who's starting at quarterback. I will take the field right now. Now, after spring practice, I may have a different answer because I want to see these quarterbacks. After fall camp, I may have a different answer. But right now, I will say Memphis will be in the championship. I don't know if they'll win it because, to me, there's still offensive line. Even though he's a 4-star, I want to see how Austin Gentle commands the offensive line because, the center has a lot of responsibility. So quarterback, center, I'll take the field just right now. Yeah.
I'm going to agree 100% with Brian. I'm the same way. I'll take the field only because I'm not sure of how Memphis, not just the quarterback. I want to see what those DBs look like because, man, we lost a lot back there too. And Chandler Martin and, man, we just lost a lot.
I tell you, AJ Pena is a kid I'm really excited to see. He's the next FCS to Memphis, is going to be a standout player. And
I understand.
And tidbit, he's a Jersey kid. That's why he's going to be awesome. No.
Oh, well, there goes the neighborhood.
And he went to my cousin's daughter went to high school with him. So this kid has a lot going for him.
So I'll just say this about being concerned about the DBs, and I don't, this is not placing any disrespect on the kids that played for Memphis this year. Memphis was 119th in the country against the pass.
They got to be more consistent.
I'm not.
So I don't worry about a position group that wasn't great. Yes, you need to be better. But guys, we're being real here. We've been saying Memphis needs to be better in the defensive backfield. How long have we been doing this podcast? 2 things. There are 5 things certain in this, or 4 things certain in this world: death, taxes. Memphis has poor safety play, and Memphis can't outside contain a quarterback to save their lives. Those 4 things are constants in this world. So I'm going to take Memphis to win the AAC, and not because, although I think Memphis is going to be really good.
Yeah.
I just don't know what the rest of the league's going to look like. And, to me, the challengers are Navy and Army. I think those are the two teams. I will give you right away. This was going to be my next question to you. It doesn't have to be Memphis. But I want think about it while I give mine, your hottest takes for 2025. It can be Memphis. It can be something else. Mine is Tulane wins 7 or less games next year. And I think one of those losses is Memphis. And I love Jerry Smith to death. I think he's a great reporter. But I'm going to be honest, guys, he pissed me off with that whole fraudulent record. And I know the Memphis staff hears this. I know they listen to this in some shape. Somebody in that building listens to this because somebody made the comment, "Oh, I hear everything," which was a pretty funny comment. But when, I said this about Boise State for a long time when they had their great run. Y'all are 7-5 season away from people forgetting about you. And I feel like, when you lose your top 3 quarterbacks, buddy, and talk about overpaying, Darren Mintz is a fine quarterback, but holy cow, Duke is paying way too much money for him. So, Larry, since I started with Bryan for the last one, I'll start with you. What is your hottest 2025 college football take?
So the first one is this, that there will be 2 G5 teams in the playoffs next year. And I know. And the reason I'm saying this is because if you look at the teams that did not go to the Pac-12, but then you've got the Pac-12 schools now. So, and those are technically not they're part of the G5. So I think you're going to have 2 next year. You're going to have one either because Boise's moving, right? Boise's moving to the Pac.
Not next year, 26.
Okay, you're right, 26. Okay. But regardless, you're still going to have 2. You're going to have 2 next year. And then the next one, you already stole my Tulane one. But as far as Memphis goes, Memphis will be in the conference championship next year. I don't know that they're going to win it, but I think they do. They finally bust down the door and get to it, despite having a complete changeover. And I want you guys to think about this. After Peyton Manning left, Tennessee won the national championship. I'm not saying that, and I'm not saying that we're going to win the national championship or anything. What I am saying is you can lose a generational quarterback like that, but the team still has momentum. And I think you're going to see that next year with Memphis. They still got a lot of momentum. But yeah, you stole my Tulane one. Tulane, and I'll go even hotter than that. Tulane does not make a bowl next year.
So Bryan, you heard it. Larry has publicly stated on December the 26th that Memphis is going to win the national championship next year. Publicly on the record. All right, Bryan, what about your hot takes?
My hot take will be next year, Mike Norvell doesn't last the season. I want him to last the season. Don't get me wrong. I want him to succeed. I just think that I think there's too much pressure. And who did he get for the offensive coordinator right now?
Gus.
Who's that coach?
The Gus Malzahn. The Gus bus is backing up into Tallahassee.
I know I've been told they're good friends, blah, blah, blah. I just don't see that working out very well. And I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he does very successful because that shows, that Memphis, if you leave Memphis as a coach, you can succeed. And I think that's good for Memphis. I don't know. I have a bad feeling that he doesn't last the season.
Well, I think what you saw this year with Mike is you can't miss on quarterback, right? Like That's the one position you can't miss in the portal. You can't. And when you figure out you've missed, you can't hold on to that just out of foolish pride.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm inclined to disagree with you, although I think it was last year, Texas A&M was paying people more not to coach than to coach. That's a hell of a lot of money. I mean, that's just, I think Mike's buyout next year's like 50, somewhere through there. And I think that, we'll wrap up with this, but like, I think at some point with the portal, I do want to get your take on that real quick before I finish up.
Mhm.
So Larry and I both think that the portal's got to move. We got to figure out something different with the
Yes.
portal. It's got to move. And, my take on it is, I don't even remember when the national title game is this year, but the Monday following the national title game to the end of January, because signing day is not relevant anymore because the NLI is gone. So you could even say January 17th to February 16th, and then the month of May. Those are your portals. Those are the days that you can enter the portal. Because I think, again, I want to get your opinion as the recruiting guy. Like, we've got to do something. I don't know how to fix it, but we got to fix it.
Yeah, it's the way it is right now because you have players. I mean, because as a coach, if you need players to play, aka Marshall, you're in a position. All right, this kid's going to the portal. Am I going to be the coach that says you're in the portal, you're gone, or am I going to be the coach? I need bodies on the team so I can field a team. It put coaches in a bad spot and it puts players in a bad spot. Because I mean, there are players that I've read articles where the kid is like, I want to play the bowl game, but if I play the bowl game, which is past December 28th, then I miss an opportunity to start somewhere else. And that's not good for the player either, because yes, I want to be with my teammates, and yes, I want to look somewhere else to start next year because I'm not going to be starting at my current, team. It's just a bad situation all around, and I think it should be changed sooner rather than later. I mean, the NCAA showed that you can make on-the-spot decisions like this JUCO, decision. So just go ahead and change it. But I'm with you. Let it be the month of January, the whole month of January.
Realistically, the teams that are still in the CFP are not losing starters to anybody else, through the portal. Like Ryan Williams, he's the first player that popped in my mind from Alabama, is not transferring out. Thank you, Duncan, for your second appearance tonight. Ryan Williams is not transferring out, 3 weeks before the national championship game. He's just not going to. So even if somebody were leaving Georgia, or I'm just going to use them, if somebody were leaving Georgia, it's going to be a second or third string guy that knows he's not going to play going forward.
Yeah.
So you're not hurting the integrity, but what you're doing now is not only are you hurting kids, you're killing bowl games. Because think about the Independence Bowl. You were going to have two conference champions. One of two bowl games have two conference champions. And again, I know people are taking this as I'm talking bad about Louisiana Tech, and I promise I'm not, but they're not Marshall that won Conference USA. And so now Army's reward is, hey, you went through the grind of the AAC, won that title, won that title. Your reward should be something more than 5-7 Louisiana Tech. Now, that's not a knock on Marshall. Marshall did what they had to do. They weren't going to have enough bodies to compete. Like they were going to have to play the equipment manager. Like they had a mass exodus. My thought was combine the Southern Miss and Marshall teams and go down and play. But so they couldn't play. So now you've cost the Independence Bowl money. And I think where you're going to see this, I think we probably make it another year with the portal window being where it is. But where you're going to see it is, let's say next year, it's the Outback Bowl, if that still is a thing, or it's the Gator Bowl, or it's the fill-in ReliaQuest car care bowl. Like, God forbid, the most wonderful bowl game that steals my heart, the Pop-Tarts Bowl, or the other one that steals my heart, the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Like, it's going to be one of these more high-profile games that, let's say you're 7-5 Iowa State, and I'm just going to pick on Matt Campbell here, and Matt Campbell gets the job at USC, and that's not going to happen. But so he takes all. So now Iowa State has to drop out of the Alamo Bowl, and they've got to go scramble and get 5-7 Texas State. And that's where I think change happens, when it affects one of the more predominant bowls, I
Prestigious.
guess, right?
Yeah.
Prestigious, yeah, that's the word I was looking for. But I mean, but God bless these player personnel people, because now you've got the portal, you got high school kids. Now this Diego Pavia ruling, which basically means if you spent time in JUCO, you get that year back, which again benefits Memphis. Anthony Lamphere will get a year back. The next step to that, my next natural progression of that is, well, if JUCO doesn't count, why does FCS count? Why does Division 2, 3, NAI, why do all those games count? So now I can't imagine and especially right here at Christmas. And I know that these guys sign up for this, but Memphis had 6 signees yesterday. 6 kids committed yesterday. And I think 2 or 3 Christmas Eve. So, and it's just, it's chess pieces, man. It's just moving chess pieces, and it's broken from the perspective of it's a great system. I'm all for it, but the timing absolutely sucks.
There's lots of details that have to be worked out, right? And at the end of the day, yes, we're all for kids being able to do what's best for them. I think 3 things: contracts. They need to sign, and I don't know what that looks like. Okay, because you and I talked about the WWE model, whatever that looks like. But there's something there where a kid, a player, signs for X period of time. Maybe it's 2 years, and then he and the school can opt out of that or whatever. Okay, so that's step 1. Number 2, there has to be we have to have a salary cap or a salary.
We will with revenue sharing.
There.
Yeah, we will with revenue share.
Right.
I think collectives have got to go. I think, and I've got friends over at both Memphis collectives, and I just think they've got to go. Because that was never the intent. I think between revenue share and true NIL is where the future is. I just think collectives have got to, either they've got to go or they've got to be corralled. And I don't want to get on the business kick of this, but if we start talking contracts, because my whole thing with NIL was, that's great. Again, 100% in favor. I will never dispute a kid making money ever.
Right.
I'd have given anything to make that kind of money when I was in college. But what do these kids know about 1099s? What do these kids know about W-4s? What do these kids know about trusts? What do these kids know about LLCs? What do these kids know about corps? What do these kids know about the BOI that businesses have to file by January 13th? So that's and the WWE model is one that has, for some reason, stood the test of time, where despite failing, I think it was 13 of the 21 factor IRS tests for whether or not you're employed, they're still allowed to be independent contractors and mandated when, where, and how. So that's the danger. And I think that's probably the next tipping point with this is, okay, fine, we're going to pay kids, no problem. That's fine. The schools are going to either pay taxes or those kids are employees. It's going to be one or the other. And I think that will be the point where this all settles, between that and the revenue sharing that's going to happen after the House settlement goes all the way through, where teams are capped at $20.5 million, which is a ridiculous number to think about, but they're capped at that sharing. But now that's across all sports. That's not just football.
Right. That's everything.
They're capped at that. So, and not to steal Brian's words, but it's going to be interesting from a business perspective how this sport moves forward. I wrote an article a couple weeks ago about how I think it's going to shake out. We're going to work on some other angles of that this summer. Former players, maybe media members, coaches, like how do they see this shaking out? But I just think there's so many questions around business, not just Ryan Silverfield getting kids. That's great. Paying kids. That's great. But who is helping? Because the schools can't. They're not allowed to help. They're not allowed to, give financial advice. Whenever I say something, I say, hey, this is not legal or financial advice. So schools certainly can't do that. But I think that's our next tipping point is the business side, right, Brian? Like how, because the kids all want the bag, but do they want the consequences and the responsibilities that bag brings? And these NIL agents out here these slime balls that are taking 20 and 30% when NFLPA agents get 3 to 5, whatever, I think it's up to 5 now. So who's giving these kids advice, not from a transfer report, but from a money perspective?
Right.
And I just think kids are chasing the bag, which I'm cool with, but we've got to fix those two things. We've got to fix the collective side of things and the wild, wild west, and we have to fix this portal window. I think those are the two big issues coming down the pike.
Yep.
All right, guys, we made it through another season. It's hard to believe 2020.
I can't believe it.
I can't either. So this summer, I know we will have the Y coach. We don't know who we'll have yet. I'm going to break into a business, at least one show this summer about the business of college athletics. I'd like to get a couple of those done because I just, again, guy with the NBA, I'm fascinated by how all these moving parts are going to work out. And I want to get some different, unique perspectives on that. Obviously, I'm not going to ask kids about their money, but, it would be interesting to get a kid's take on how the process in general works. Maybe not your specific situation, but how does the whole process work? So we're going to have some stuff during the summer. Sam and Devin are going to keep cutting it up on the Tiger Basketball Report podcast to follow the basketball team this season. But yeah, that's it. Another season now.
And I am bullish on this team, but I am more bullish on the direction of the program. And I think that's what we need to focus on, right? Because, and Ryan said this, and I'll close with this for this season. I have not always been the most positive about everything, but the reality is that we haven't. Yeah, positive, Paul.
I have.
but he's right. I haven't been right. I haven't always been. But I will say this: the program overall has not lost that. We're certainly not 2019, but we haven't lost momentum, and that is damned hard to do. So for that, I thank Ryan, and I think he's done a hell of a job in that sense.
Brian, your closing thoughts.
Closing thoughts is, just like Larry said, to me, the future is bright, and next year could be another special year of, Ryan doesn't get the credit he deserves, I think. And I think next year, if it goes the way I think it goes, I think you'll start to see fans turn around and come his way and see him in the light of, a Justin and a Mike. I think they'll appreciating him more, especially if he gets another 10, 11 win season. I think fans will finally start to come around. Will the local media members be the same way? We'll see. Because it's interesting, thing I like seeing is this Silverfield versus local media. He throws out some things sometimes that I'm like, I don't see that. Maybe because I'm not in Memphis and see it every day. But it's interesting, that little back and forth.
I will say that is one of the things I've always respected about Coach Silverfield is he gives what he gets, and he does it in a very different way. He's never going to call a media member out, but if you write something bad about him or say something bad, he's going to get that back to you. He's going to, and everybody doesn't know it, but if you're standing there in the press conference, when he's talking to you. When you've said something and he's heard it, which I don't care what these coaches say. Right? Well, I don't listen to any of that. Yes, you do. You hear all of it, or somebody tells you about it, and then you go listen to it and read it. But he has a way of doing that, and I think the media has a great relationship with Ryan. I think he has gotten, let's be real, less boring over the past couple years. He's gotten a little more forthright.
He's coming into his own, yeah.
Yes, and he's a young coach who's never had a head coaching job before. He's a young coach, and it's taken him some time, but I think he's come around. So
I agree.
He's been, and I will say he's been more open to the media than any of the coaches in the past, in my experience, because I mean, I've only been here since Tommy West. I think, in the beginning, West was more open than Silverfield, but now I think Silverfield, hands down, has been the most open of any coach that I've seen in the Memphis since I've been covering him.
Well, that's because Tommy was having a mistress on the side.
Well, no. All right, that's it. We're all done here. So for the best co-host, all the land, Brian Moss and Larry Marley, it's John Maddox signing off for the last time this season. Follow us on is it X now? Is that what's called? Yes, on X.
Yeah.
To kind of keep up with our schedule. And if you have not joined TSR yet, what in the world are you doing? We had some breaking transfer portal guys before anybody else had it. And we try to keep you as informed as we can. So for Bryan and Larry, this is John signing off, and we will see everybody. Who knows, but we'll see you several times this summer.
Next year.
Yeah, next year. We'll see everybody next year. Have a great week, everybody, and Happy New Year.